Ryan here with Dark Rangers Inc. and May actually makes 1 year of making these videos regularly for you guys every single week. And so as a special type of episode, kind of like I did at the end of 2023 where I shared my top 10 takeaways, I wanted to just share some wisdom that I've gotten over doing the channel for the last 12 months from interacting with you guys literally every single day, whether it's from the Dark Rangers Inc. community group, the folks I work with one-on-one, comment sections below the videos, emails and messages on social media groups. I actually talk to dozens of you guys each week and probably over 1,000 of you over the last year. I really try to get back and respond to everything that you guys send me. If I have missed it, it was on mistake. And even if I don't respond to one of your comments, I at least try to like or engage with it so that you know that I did take the time to actually read it. Now, when you interact with a lot of people in the astrophotography or really any community, you start to see some common traits amongst people that are doing well, continuing to get better, and really achieving their astrophotography goals. And then you see some common traits amongst people that do kind of get stuck or plateau. Now, I do want to make a little deal with you guys. If you're someone who just does this for fun, doesn't care about bettering their astrophotography or improving it, I would ask that you click off now. And I'm not doing this as some reverse psychology plot to get you to watch to the end. This really is going to be for folks that want to get some tips to actually improve their astrophotography. And it's a little bit more going to be about what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. The astrophotography community is incredibly nice, and that's awesome. But I think a lot of you guys watch my channel because you know I'm willing to be honest and keep it real with you. This channel is a ton of work, and its motto has and always will be better astrophotography through education and community. So I thought I would take some time to get real with you guys and share some things that I think will help those of you who are struggling to get better or maybe are stuck in a plateau after improving consistently and maybe plow through some of those stages and get to where you want to go with your astrophotography. As a quick aside before we jump in, and something I rarely do, it's been over half a dozen episodes since I've asked for this verbally, I would love to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the month to really cap off what would be to me a successful first year in YouTube in such a small niche hobby. If you haven't subscribed, please consider hitting the button. And if you have subscribed and you want me to keep making content into the next year and you get any kind of value out of it, please hit that like button, maybe comment which one of the tips that you're going to pursue to ultimately get better at your astrophotography in the coming year, because that's what this channel is all about. So thank you guys so much for your support. It means the world. You guys are the only reason I do this channel. So if you guys could help me out, that would mean the world. Thank you so much. The first thing that might be standing in the way of you getting better astrophotography is the most important thing with anything that you pursue in life. How you do one thing is likely how you do most things. And there's one very clear differentiator that I see between people that are doing well and people that are struggling, and that is mentality. What's going on in here dictates your approach and outlook to everything in life. I have seen a common denominator on this new wave of astrophotographers where they really want everything to be kind of easy, fast, and as close to free as humanly possible. And I personally have just never understood that. I don't want it to be easy. The challenge is what makes it fun, and it also is what makes it special. If it was easy, everybody could do it, and then it really wouldn't be anything that's special or cool or to be admired. You are that person to all of your friends and family that took the time. Man, I could never figure that out. You're that guy that is producing these awesome works of art that none of your friends or family could do. Imagine if everybody could just point their cell phone up at the sky and get a nebula image that looks like you did with your full rig, and it automatically processed itself and you could post it to social media, and everybody around you is putting out the same images that you're able to do. It wouldn't be special anymore. It would take the fun out of it, and we wouldn't have the drive to want to continue to invest the time, effort, and resources into getting better at the hobby. The way I see it is this hobby should never get easier. I should just get better if I'm doing it correctly. As soon as I master one thing and that starts to become easy or mundane, I should be looking to the next task or the next step to ultimately improve. Now, I'm seeing more and more people start to lean on some of these crutches that have been coming out that ultimately ultimately do make things easier. And the argument I hear is, well, I don't have to get as much data because I can use denoise. I don't have to have, good guiding because I can use blur exterminator, and it will still be good. The better option is almost always going to be the more difficult one. So rather than using those tools to substitute for the hard work to ultimately get the best quality image, use them as the cherry on top. So make sure that you do take all the time and effort to get the best result you can, and then just allow that to take it to another level. What you'll see is that astrophotography is at the top level going to keep escalating faster and faster because folks aren't taking these tools to make it easier. They're taking the tools to elevate the quality of their work. So they're putting in the same amount of effort or more effort, but instead of getting this level of outcome with that amount of effort, they're now getting this level. What's going to happen is if you get stuck at an effort level or even drop your effort level and then use the technology, you're just catching back up to where you were. You're not actually improving. And I would suggest that you don't fall into that trap. The only way to make something that's difficult seem easier is really just to lean into the difficulty. Take pride in it. Feel a sense of accomplishment when you've taken those hours of studying and practicing and learning, going to that dark sky site, spending 1 or 2 more nights out there to get some better data, taking that extra time to learn this processing step that you've never used before. Enjoy the process. Don't rush to just getting a good result, because if you just get a good result and nothing is put into it, it's kind of a shallow accomplishment. It's really the difficulty, effort, and growth that ultimately makes this or any hobby worth doing. My second tip, and something that I see probably more common than anything else, even in the folks that I work with one-on-one, well, usually for the first session and then not after that, is not getting enough integration time or signal. And the reason I say or signal is because not all integration time is created equal. If you're doing 10 hours of data in your Bortle 7 backyard with heavy filters versus a Bortle 2 dark sky site with no filters or very light filters, it might not be enough signal here, but it might be enough here. There's also certain targets that just don't require as much time as others. So there really is no one answer. I hear people ask, well, how much time do I need? Well, I just did a butterfly nebula in SHO that I had 6.5 hours of data. I'm going to get it probably to 10 or 12, and it turned out pretty good. And I did my first draft on M101 with 18 to 20 hours of data, and I wasn't happy with it, and I ultimately elevated that to 35 hours. Now, I think it is okay to do that process. In both cases, I knew the first step was just a rough draft, just to kind of see where I was at. And so my second kind of side tip to this would be only process to the amount of integration or signal that you have. If you try to overprocess or push it to where you want the final result to be, you're really just going to showcase those blotchy backgrounds, that muddled color, all that speckling you see. Not having integration time is really the cause of and solution to, if you get more of it, to most of the processing problems that I see people have. Who knows? You might actually be better at processing than you think. The problems that you're running into and the reason the tutorials that you've been watching aren't working for you is because you might not have enough signal. The more you stretch data, the more color you try to infuse, contrast, etc., the more you try to push and pull out of that data, the more it's really going to showcase all of the underlying issues. So if you do get a lower amount of data on something, maybe it's a first draft, make sure that you process the image accordingly. Process according to what the data can actually handle. When you see it start to fall off the rails and get blotchy and patchy and, just fuzzy, not looking good, don't just crank up the denoise. Say, you know what? I either need to get some more signal or pull it back. At least get a clean image that's respectable. Realize, hey, I need to throw some more time into this one, and then go out and do that, and then finish the final draft with something that you can be proud of. One thing I hear people say all the time, and again, this goes back to mindset, they say, well, I can only shoot a couple nights a month, it's cloudy, but then rather than taking those couple nights and putting it into one target, and maybe instead of putting out 3 images with 4 or 5 hours each, they do 1 image with 15 hours that would actually be something that they could really be proud of and actually improve their overall quality of astrophotography. Let's have that discipline to pull that data together, and if you want to practice, which I really highly advocate, use something like Telescope Live, which really was a godsend for me this El Nino winter. I was able to keep practicing. I did over 40 images in a 6-month time frame, and it really helped me propel. Or get a group of friends and pool your data together and share and do it that way. Whatever you need to do to make sure you scratch that itch, keep practicing. But then when it comes time to actually use your data, get more of it so you can get that signal to noise and ultimately increase the overall quality of the images that you put out. As with most of my lists, these do kind of build. So step 3 is really going to be about using all of the processing tools that are available or that you need. I see so many people dig their heels in on just using one tool, whether it's Zero, whether it's PixInsight, APP, whatever it is, and they're not using some of the other tools that are out like Photoshop or Lumiere or Lightroom or whatever other program that you want to use to help you finish off that image. I see so many people who are on the verge of buying Photoshop for months and months. God, I know I need to do it. I know I need to do it. Or even worse, a lot of you guys that have actually got the subscription, you have it downloaded, and rather than just invest the time and effort to learn that, you're spending more time trying to make those changes in a software that's just not as good as it. If you take two people of equal processing skill level and give one a single program and one 2 or even 3 like I use, the person that has more tools available is going to give you a better result, and they're going to do it faster. So I'd really advise you, I don't have any affiliation with any software company, so the only reason I'm promoting it is because it's what I do. This ultimately, the investment that I've put into learning 2 and now 3 softwares with APP allows me to put out better astrophotography. That's faster. So that's one of those times when, yes, putting in the extra effort allows me to do better and faster at the same time, but it was because I put in a lot of time and effort to learn another software. So there is time when better and faster can coincide, but usually there's effort or money that kind of meets in the middle to bind it all together. So if you are spending extra time doing all these different color masks and crazy things to bring out the individual colors that you want in one versus just going to another program and seeing that you have these hue, saturation, and luminance sliders and you can pick any color and just manipulate that, which is basically putting a color mask on the rest of the image, as well as so many other tools that are available that will just make your life so much easier, because those programs have way bigger budgets and teams of people working on it. And PixInsight and some of these Astro specific tools are amazing. I use them every single time for a huge chunk of my image processing. But that final color work and those final steps, I absolutely take it into Adobe and utilize that tool set. Doesn't have to be Photoshop. It can be, whatever one that you want to use, but don't get caught up in whether it's pride or laziness that keeps you stuck using one tool. You're just really putting yourself at a disadvantage by just sticking with one. I know a lot of you guys I'm talking to directly, and if you're looking for a good resource to get you started on something like Photoshop, I do have a just short of an hour-long tutorial. Check it out in the description, and it will take you through a very easy to follow workflow that in 60 minutes, I promise you, you will have a much better image than when you started, and you will kick yourself for not having chosen to switch or add it to your repertoire a lot sooner. Number 4, since we are already on the topic of processing, is really having a vision for your final outcome and mastering the understanding of the tools and how to use them, not so much when to use them and which one to pick. I see so many people obsessing over their 3rd or 4th denoise tool or their 5th or 6th background extraction tool in the last 6 months, and they don't have a really solid understanding of how to stretch their image or understanding color theory. They don't know that if they have a little bit of blue in the background, rather than just subtracting blue, sometimes it's good to add a little bit of yellow to offset it and neutralize it. They're not able to get the most out of their data because they don't have the GHS tool perfected. I can promise you, if you're just applying some kind of linear stretch or STF type function to your data, you are leaving performance in the image that you have on the table. I think a lot of people get really caught up in having the perfect workflow rather than understanding what each tool does and using it in a way to maximize and get to their end result. The reason I kind of stopped doing workflow episodes is because I attack every single image a little bit differently. People ask me, hey, what are your settings for this tool? Well, it totally depends. If we're talking about, star sharpening, for example, with a narrowband 3 nanometer filter, the stars are going to come out a lot smaller already than a broadband filter. So I'm going to use a lot lower setting for that. If I'm talking about using local histogram equalization, I might use a different kernel size to bring out the galaxy arms versus some of the dark dust nebula in a big nebula target. So it all depends. There's so many different tools also to accomplish the same thing. If we're talking about sharpening, I can use blur exterminator, I can use local histogram equalization, I can use the clarity or texture slider in Photoshop, I can use topaz sharpening, I can create a secondary layer, change the blend mode to overlay, and use the high pass filter, choosing the correct number of pixels to achieve the sharpened look that I want. So there's so many different ways to do all of these, and rather than really focusing and nitpicking on the perfect order and being locked into using the same process every single time, knowing when to sub one method in for another and realizing that for this target, this might be the best way, but for this one, I'm going to go ahead and go over here. That's why I don't subscribe to having a strict workflow. I really focus on having a mastery of every single tool and knowing when to sub it in and when to leave it on the sidelines. And ultimately, it's going to give you a lot more flexibility, creativity, and you're really going to be leading the workflow rather than having the workflow leading you and not really knowing what's going to happen when you hit execute and just kind of hoping for the best rather than really being able to predict the outcome when you use the next tool and the tool after that. You're able to think like chess and be a few moves ahead, and that way you're going to be making smaller changes along the way that add up to a good result rather than trying to make a big sweeping change each and every step along the way, leading to an over-processed or unnatural look. The fifth and final thing that could be holding you back from better astrophotography is relying too heavily on only one or two avenues of learning. I think a lot of folks really lean heavily on YouTube, and I used to joke back in the day that you could learn heart surgery on YouTube. There's so much information that's available, and that's actually part of the problem. There are so many different buzz topics that come out, and it's constantly pulling you in a different direction. And so I always tell people, if you are going to lean heavily on YouTube, pick one or two people and really lean into the path that they're going on. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to get pulled in a million different directions. You're going to hear so many different top priorities. And the content in YouTube is really designed to be kind of polarizing, grab your attention, hold it for as long as possible, and then you're off to the next video. We really can't get as in-depth as we'd like to. Believe me, I would love to go much deeper in-depth on all the topics that I make, but I realize that people aren't going to sit through an hour-long episode. If you have 30 or 40% of the people still watching after 25 minutes, you're killing it on YouTube. So you have to understand that the episodes you're making, the creators are keeping that concept in mind, that we can't have this last a super long time because people aren't going to tune in. So it's kind of a high level overview. So that's why the next step for me after creating content that I wish I had when I was coming up in the hobby was to create a small community. I saw that when people were watching my videos, their knowledge was growing from maybe here to here. And then I thought, well, why don't we have a community where they can come in, ask specific questions, assign not only myself, but a few group experts, and then we can take it even higher. And that's what I've seen. People know that they can come in, ask questions, get reliable answers. There are plenty of communities out there. I'd recommend joining one and even checking out local astronomy clubs. The problem with local astronomy clubs is some of them do tend to be pretty heavily based on visual astronomy, but you're bound to find one or two people at least that you can kind of latch onto as mentors. And then the final thing, something that I was looking into 3 or 4 years ago that I really wasn't able to get a hold of, and now you see more and more people offering it, was getting some one-on-one time. Because I had that broad understanding of all these topics, I really just needed someone to fill in all of those little gaps so I could put it all together and have a fundamental understanding of everything. I got pointed in the direction of, different video series, and I didn't want to watch a 15-hour video series starting me all the way from scratch just to learn those handful of concepts that I needed. So that was the thing that I implemented a few months ago and have been working with a lot of you guys guys one-on-one, not only on the processing side, but also, doing gear consultations. So rather than trying to scour the internet and do a bunch of research, ask a million different people, you can go to someone that hopefully you trust. It doesn't have to be me, it can be anybody, but you can rely on their expertise and most importantly, their experience, not the marketing hype, not the claims that the manufacturers are making, but somebody that's had experience behind multiple different brands of telescopes or cameras or mounts, whatever it is you're looking at, and is going to be able to walk you through a processing session starting at the beginning of the image and getting you all the way to the end. Now, I know immediately what people are thinking is that is a cost investment in your education, and a lot of people scoff at that. After all, I can get it for free online. And that's true, but to me, money is really just an expression of time. And so if I'm paying somebody for 1 hour of their time, if it saves me 6 hours of time, I'm not really paying them for the 1 hour. I'm paying them for the 6 hours that they saved. And I can promise you that what you make for 6 hours is going to be a lot more money than you're paying that person for the 1 hour of their time. And so it's really about being much more efficient and smart. I am going to set up some small group classes as well so that it can be more reasonable and approachable for a larger audience, and we can get more people up to speed at a quicker rate. So look out for those in the near future. The last thing I would say is don't let your pride or ego get in the way of reaching out and getting help. I know a lot of us take pride in learning everything ourselves, and that's cool. There is a nobility to that, but just understand you are slowing yourself down. You are working harder and not smarter. And if you do link up with a good group, a good person, a good mentor, or a series of people, you are going to learn so much more fast and so much more efficiently. And you're also probably going to get more accurate information than trying to scour the internet and discern it all down into a small amount of knowledge that you know you can trust. So I want to challenge you to get out there and find new ways to learn, whether it's joining a different group, getting a mentor, finding a couple channels that you can really rely on. Just invest in yourself and your education in this hobby. It's going to help you progress so much faster. And it's also going to alleviate a lot of the confusion and frustration from trying to do it all on your own. Believe me, I get to see the before and after and how quick people are getting better that I work with on a regular basis. And it is really the most fun part of doing the channel is getting folks that go from total beginners, they've never even done the hobby, to picking out gear, getting it, seeing how excited they are, helping them get set up, and then ultimately processing that first set of data and seeing them put out awesome work within 3 or 4 weeks of our first phone call is really the coolest part of doing this at this point for me. Just seeing that rapid growth and seeing and proving that it doesn't need to take years to get good at this hobby. It's a lot of fun, and it is available for you if you're willing to raise your hand and ask for that help. So guys, hopefully this was of some use for you guys. I know it was a little bit long and it was a little wordy. I know maybe it did seem like a little bit of tough love, but I promise it comes from the best possible place. If you're still with me, not only in terms of this episode, but also you've been with me through the whole journey, you guys are just awesome, and thank you so much. You're my inspiration. You're the thing that gets me excited to get behind this microphone, continue to learn about lighting and video editing and how to create a website and all of this stuff that I've had to do over the last year. And if I can figure all that out in my spare time, you can certainly learn how to get better at astrophotography. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and until the next one, as always, clear skies.